remembering has benefits because basically it tells us who we are. There is a continuity from something that is happening to us in the past, and then we're moving forward. And in order to moving forward, using what happened in the past, we can construct potential eventual experiences. Like, for instance, for me today, I never presented in a meeting, in such a meeting, but based on my experience of my prior presentations, I can kind of think about what will happen. And so basically, that's where we are saying remembering and having memories can be helpful because it allows us to think about and plan, to plan in a constructive way some future scenarios and choose different scenarios, for instance, or choose which path to take. So that's on the aspect of why that capacity that we have remembering, it's important. And it shares, it's really, that's what we are calling mental time travel. So basically we have that capacity to think about past experiences, as well as to think about potentially future experiences that might happen to us. So from that aspect is something that is very, very beneficial for all of us to think about. But now there is a moment when thinking about past experiences may not be so fruitful. And that's a little bit of a different category now that I'm talking about. And it's not so much about, I'm not talking about a memory. I'm just talking about the process itself. Sometimes we might be stuck on a given thought. Let's say I had an accident this morning, and I go to work and start thinking about that accident repetitively, and I'm fixating on that. So it's the process itself. Of course, it's something that bad that happened, but what is more destructive to me is that entering in that cycle of repetitive thinking about something negative that happened. And that's where my interest is going. Because, yeah, of course, we were able to show remembering is something beneficial. It helps us construct the future. And not only that, we were able to see that the same brain networks, the configuration of the brain is very similar when we're thinking about any past experiences and when we are trying to project and think about any future events that might happen to us. So again, the dynamics of the brain, the strength might be less or more strong in both cases, but the pattern, the configuration is there for both, which means that there is an underlying basic mechanisms in place. And so that's the beneficial aspect. Now, unfortunately, we are human beings, and sometimes we can easily go in that, I would call it a maladaptive pattern of thinking and repetitively thinking about something that it's not critical or it's not what is happening in the current moment, in the now. Because we have an activity, we have to do something. Let's say, oh, I have an important paper that I need to submit that day. But that accident for the morning, it's coming and coming, and the processes of engaging with it, that's where the maladaptive process is happening. And why I'm saying maladaptive is just because at that moment in the now, there is another task that my attention needs to be focused. But instead of that, I'm going in that repetitive thinking. And I'm giving a simple example of the accident, but I think in everyday life, we have so many aspects. We had the hard conversation with a friend, and then we continue thinking about that hard conversation, not in a constructive way, not in a way of thinking how we can solve the problem. It's more about ruminating, and that's kind of the scientific ruminating on that idea or that thought, and being stuck, not being able to pull away or go away of that, staying really in that. And what is happening in that moment? In that moment, let's say if I'm writing my paper will not be so great. Or if you need to engage in an activity, let's say pay attention to a friend that is next to you, you're not really paying attention to the friend next to you. You're just still in your thoughts. And that's where the problem is coming. And as I said, it's not about the content. It's not that it was something negative. It's really about the stance that we are taking, or the process that we are engaging with. Because as neuroscientists, we have seen that, let's say, if people are asked to reflect on their past experiences through different instruction, either focusing on that emotional feeling, like the butterflies in the stomach, the sweaty hands on one hand, so asking them really to focus on those emotional aspects and getting stuck with them, or asking them to just think about something else, not think about the emotional aspect, but more thinking about the event, where it happened, who was in that event. Then we are seeing that they're remembering that same memory in a different way, which is for us an indication. Memories, they're not static, they're not pictures. The memories, we're constructing them in the now. And that's where it's important. So what we are doing at that moment and how we are reacting to what is happening in that moment, that's what is important. And so I was saying we can take different stances, and that's what we are seeing. So let's say people who have that capacity or skill, I will call it skill, that skill to detach themselves and see more the event from an observer type of perspective, and being aware, yes, this happened, but this is just happening. So that kind of stance, which we are trying also now to examine with brain neuroimaging tools, being able to decenter from that experience. That's a very important aspect. And the centering is also a key component of mindfulness. And so I think that's where the transition is. So there might be people who have that tendency or that skill to decenter. But the key here is how we can cultivate it so that everyone can do it, and whether that's beneficial. And so that's how we are moving towards something that can be, at the moment, let's say, individual differences in people who can differently react to different situations. Now, identify those strategies or those skills that are really helpful. And one of the helpful skills is exactly that aspect of centering, being able to detach and being aware of that situation, of the situation. And so that's where I would say we can go now towards mindfulness and practicing mindfulness. So here again, I'm a neuroscientist, so I will be talking more from that, I would say, perspective, and seeing mindfulness training as a cognitive training, basically, how we can train the brain to process the current moment in a different way, in a beneficial way. Because what I was referring to, rumination and those are tendency that we are trying to figure out how we can cope with them, for the reason because people who are engaging in those ruminative thoughts usually or typically they don't feel very well. There is a decreased well-being, decreased resilience. So what we are trying to do is identify the mechanism and the skill that can be trainable so that we can achieve that change. And I told you, the brain is dynamic and it has that capacity, neuroplasticity. So it's the same with us, how we can have one skill and then cultivate that skill so that it can be helpful and adaptive. And we can react in a very, we can be in a very attentive state to what is happening to us at that present moment.